Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. So in today's video we'll be going through question 1 of the November 2020 mathematics paper 1. Okay, so that would be the mathematics paper that was written last year by the matriculants last year, and this is the paper 1 exam. So just a high level summary of the exam. So the total marks for the entire exam is 150 marks, right? And the duration is 3 hours, and in that 3 hours you will be attempting 11 questions. Okay, but in today's video we're just going to be going through question 1, and I'll be showing you how to work through the questions that were posed and where exactly you'll be getting your marks. Okay, so we can start with the first question 1.1, which says solve for x. So you can expect that in your upcoming exam, the first question that will come up will be a solve for x question. Okay, the first couple of questions will be a solve for x question. So let's attempt the 4 questions that are given there. So under question 1.1, which is solve for x, the first question there is question 1.1.1, where we are solving the equation x squared minus 6x is equals to 0. Right, so always when we have equations where the highest power is raised to the power 2, those are quadratic equations, right? So with quadratic equations, there are 2 ways in which you can solve the equations, right? The first way is using factorization, right, where we've factorized, and the second method is where we use the quadratic formula, right, the quadratic formula, which is given by x is equals to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, right, all over 2a. So when you're dealing with quadratic equations, again, these are equations where the highest power is raised to the power of 2. Then you can solve the equations using 2 methods, either using factorizing or using the quadratic formula. And even if you use either the factorizing method or the quadratic formula, you should be able to arrive at the same answers, right? I will be showing you how to use the factorizing method and the quadratic formula in question 1.1.1, but going forth, where applicable, I will be choosing the correct formula to use, or the method to solve for x. Okay, so we have the equation x squared minus 6x is equals to 0. If we use the first method, which is factorization, right, so that would be method 1. If we use method 1, then that means we're going to factorize. Now we can see from this equation that the common factor that we have on the left hand side of the equation is an x, so we can substitute out the x, and what we're left with is x minus 6, which is equals to 0. All right, then moving forward to solve the equation, this means that either x is equals to 0 or x minus 6 is equals to 0, right, which means that either x is 0 or x is equals to 6. So that would be how you solve the equation given in 1.1.1 using the factorization method, right? Now if we were to use the second method, method 2, which is solving using the quadratic equation, we know that the formula for the quadratic equation is that x is equals to minus b, right, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, right, all over 2a. Right, now we know that our standard quadratic formula is given by a x squared plus bx plus c. So now if we substitute the values of a, b, and c that we see in equation 1.1.1, then we can see that x is equals to minus 6 plus or minus the square root of minus 6 squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is 0. Right, and this is all over 2 times 1, which means that x will be equal to 6 plus or minus the square root of 6 squared, which is 36, right, all over 2, right, which means that sorry about that, so that's all over 2, which means that x is equals to 6, right, plus or minus 6 all over 2, right. So therefore we can see that x is equals to 12 over 2, which is 6, or x is equals to 0 over 2, which is 0. Right, so we can see that whether we use the factorization method or we use the quadratic formula, we arrive at the same answers for the x values. Now, when it comes to how you get your marks, so your first mark comes from the factorization. So if you use your factorization method, so that would be for factorizing correctly. If you use the quadratic formula, you would get your first mark from substituting the correct values of a, b, and c into the formula. All right, then your next mark comes from the correct values of x. So you get half a mark there, and then you get your total of 2 marks, and that's done for question 1.1.1. Okay, so the next question, which is question 1.1.2, is also a solve for x question, wherein the equation given is x squared plus 10x plus 8 is equals to 0, right? And they say that you must solve for x correct to 2 decimal places. So based off of how the question is phrased, you can already preempt that the method that you should be using is the quadratic formula, because you are rounding to 2 decimal places, and so you can preempt that you'll have some values that are not whole numbers, and so the best formula to use would be the quadratic formula. So we know that the formula to solve for x is that x is equals to minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, right? So if we substitute the values of a, b, and c based off of what is given in equation 1.1.2, then we can say that x, right, is equals to minus the value of b is 10 plus or minus plus or minus the square root of 10 squared, which is 100, minus 4 times a, which is 1, and c, which is 8, right, all over 2 times 1. Okay, so step further, x is equals to minus 10 plus or minus the square root of, that would be 100 minus 4 times 8, which is 32, and that'll give us 68 all over 2, which means that x is equals to minus 10 plus or minus the square root of 68, which is around 8.2462 all over 2. Therefore, we can say that x is equals to minus 10 plus 8.246 over 2, which is equals to negative 0.88. So perform the calculation in your calculators. You should get negative 0.88, or x is equals to minus 10 minus 8.2462 all over 2, which is equals to negative 9.12. Correct to 2 decimal places. Okay, so then how you would get your marks, your first mark is for correctly substituting the values of a, b, and c into the formula. Okay, and then the next mark would be for your values of x, and then you will get your 3 marks, and then we're done with question 1.1.2. Next question is question 1.1.3, which is given by the formula 1 minus x times x plus 2 is less than 0, right? You can see that the formula is already factorized, right? But we need to be very, very, very careful because this is an inequality. So this means that 1 minus x is less than 0, right? Or x plus 2 is less than 0, right? Which means that either x is greater than 1, right? Or x is less than minus 2, right? So if we quickly just draw the graph of this equation, right? So that will be your x-axis, right? Your y-axis will be somewhere there. So this is not drawn according to scale. So we already know our critical values are here at 1 and at minus 2. And we can see that the values for this graph, so the values of y are negative where x is less than 2, and they're also negative where x is greater than 1, right? Which supports the solutions that we gave here, which says that x is greater than 1 and x is less than negative 2. Okay, so in terms of where you will get your marks, okay, you'll get your marks either if you drew your graph, so the method that you use, so either by solving, right, bearing in mind that there's inequalities, or by using the graph, you'll get your first mark, and then you get your second and third mark from the correct values of x, where you show that the values of y are negative where x is greater than 1 and where x is less than -2. Okay, so then that will give you your total of 3 marks, right? Boom. And then you're done with question 1.1.3. Right, the next question 1.1.4, is given by the formula square root of x plus 18 is equals to x minus 2. Right, very, very, very important. We are seeing a square root sign. So what this means is that whatever values of x that we get, we need to plug them back into this equation to see whether the left hand side and the right hand side of the equation are satisfied. And this is because we have the square root sign, and so the sign in front of the answer for, or the value that's given as an answer for x, will have an impact in terms of whether the left hand side and the right hand side are equal. So very, very important, when you get an equation like this which has a square root, know that whatever value of x that you get at the end, you have to substitute it back into the equation to see if indeed the left hand side is equal to the right hand side. Okay, so the first step in solving this equation, because we have a square root on the left hand side, what we need to do is to first remove the square root sign, which means we will raise the left hand side to the power of 2, and we will do the same thing on the right hand side. So then what we have is x plus 18, right, is equals to, and if we write this fully out, it would be x squared minus 4x plus 4, right, which means that 0 is equals to x squared minus 5x minus 14, right? Then again, we've gotten our equation into a standard formula. So like we mentioned in question 1.1.1, there are 2 ways in which you can solve this equation. You can either use the factorization method or you can use the quadratic formula. I'm going to use the factorization method, but you can use the quadratic formula to test whether you will get the same answer. Okay, just in case when you get to the exam and they specifically say solve this equation using the quadratic formula or whatever. All right, so if we factorize, we will get that 0 is equals to, we have an x here, we have an x, that will be 7 and 2 minus plus. So those are the factors that I get, right? If you have questions in terms of how to factorize, I know I'm going quite fast because I already know what multiples are going to give me, a 14 and a 5 together. But if you need assistance in terms of how to factorize, or if that's something that you're struggling with, please mention it in the comments, all right? Or just send me an email in the email address that's given in the description, and then I'll be able to assist you. Okay, so right, so we factorized it. So in solving this, we know that either x minus 7 is equals to 0, right, or x plus 2 is equals to 0, right, which means either x is 7 or x is equals to minus 2, right? Now again, very important, we found our values of x, but we need to substitute them back into the equation, the initial equation given, to see whether the answer satisfies both the left and the right hand side of the equation. So if we check, if x is equals to 7, right, then the left hand side will equal to the square root of 7 plus 18, right, which is equals to the square root of 25, which is 5, right? And the right hand side is equals to x, which is 7, minus 2, which is equals to 5. So indeed, the left hand side is equals to the right hand side. So we are happy with this answer, right? Then if x is equals to minus 2, right, the left hand side will be equal to the square root of minus 2 plus 18, which is 16, right, which is equals to 4, right? And the right hand side will equal to minus 2, which is minus 4. And we can see that the right hand side is not equal to the left hand side. So this answer of x is equals to minus 2 is not a valid answer. So your final answer would be x is not equal to minus 2. Very, very, very important, like I mentioned. If you get an equation where you see that there's a square root, always resubstitute back the answer that you get to see if the left hand side and the right hand side of the equation are equal. Okay, so in terms of how you will get your marks, right? Okay, so the first mark that you get is for squaring, right, both the left hand side and the right hand side. The second mark you get is for getting your equation into the standard form, where we have x squared, x and your constant, right? Then your next marks is for correctly factorizing, right? If you were using the quadratic formula, your third mark will come from correctly substituting the values of a, b and c, which in this case are 1, minus 5 and minus 14, into the quadratic formula. Okay, that's where you'd get your third mark. And then lastly, your 2 marks will come from the correct values of x, particularly that x is not equal to minus 2. And that's how you get your 5 marks, and done with question 1.1.4. Okay. Okay, the next question 1.2, is a solving for simultaneous equations. Okay, so we are solving for the values of x and y. So the equations that are given, right, are x plus y is equals to 3. Let's say we'll call that equation 1. And 2x squared plus 4x minus y is equals to 15. Let's call that equation 2. All right. Now, the simplest formula that you can rearrange, the simplest equation that you can rearrange is equation 1. So you can say from equation 1, right? From equation 1, we can rearrange the equation and say that y is equals to 3 minus x, and call that equation 3. Okay, then the next step, we are going to substitute what we call equation 3 into equation 2, right? So in equation 2, wherever we see a y, we are going to substitute it with 3 minus x. So then we will have 2x squared plus 4x, that's an xy. So y is 3 minus x, right? Minus y, which is 3 minus x, right? Is equals to 15. Right, so what we have done is we've substituted equation 3 into equation 2. Now let's try and rearrange this. So that's 2x squared plus that would be a 12x minus 4x squared minus 3 plus x minus 15 is equals to 0. So that would be a minus 2x squared plus 13x minus 18 is equals to 0. Okay, so let's just rearrange this. So that would be 2x squared minus 13x plus 18 is equals to 0. So if we factorize this, that would be 2x and x there, right? And that would be equal to 0, which means that either 2x minus 9 is equals to 0, or x minus 2 is equals to 0, which means x is equals to 4.5, or x is equals to 2. So now if we substitute the values of x into equation 3, which is that y is equals to 3 minus x, we would then be able to get our values of y. So if x is equals to 4.5, then according to equation 3, then y is equals to 3 minus 4.5, which is equals to minus 1.5, right? And if x is equals to 2, then y will be equals to 3 minus 2, which is equals to 1. Now in terms of where you will get your marks, so your first mark you get from rearranging the equation. So the first step where we rearranged equation 1 and called it equation 3, that's where you get your first mark. Okay, and then you will get your second mark, right, for correctly substituting equation 3 into equation 2. So that's where you will get your second mark, right? Then your third mark you get by working through and getting your equation into the standard form. Okay, then your fourth mark you will get for factorizing. If you use the quadratic formula, then your fourth mark you will get it when you correctly substitute the values of a, b, and c into the formula. All right, and then your fifth mark you will get it for the correct values of x, right? Correct values of x. And then lastly, your 6th mark, you will get it for the correct values of y, which will give you a total of 6 marks. And then done with question 1.2. All right, so then now for the last question, question 1.3. All right, let's read the question together. So it says, if n, right, is an integer, so n is an integer, right, for which n to the power of 200 is less than 5 to the power of 300, then determine the value of n. All right, so we're given a formula here which says n to the power of 200 is less than 5 to the power of 300, right? We can rearrange this and say n squared to the power of 100 is less than 5 cubed to the power of 100, right? So we get both the left and the right hand side to the same power of 100, right? Then we can reduce this further, right, and remove the power 100 and say that n squared is less than, it is less than 5 to the power of 3, which is equals to 125, right? And we can then solve, right, and say that this means that n is less than 11.18. So if you take the square root of 128, it'll give you, rounded to 2 decimals, 11.18. But remember, n is an integer, right? N is an integer, so this means that n is equals to 11. Okay, and so in terms of how you'll get your marks for this question, so you get your first mark for factorizing the exponents, right? Then you get your second answer for the next step, and then you get your last mark, your third mark for 11, because n is an integer. Okay, so then you'll get your 3 marks, and then done with question 1.3. Okay, so that concludes question 1 of the entire exam. According to the mark allocation and the time given, question 1 should take about 25-26 minutes to complete. So be wary of how long you take to answer the questions. Obviously my video is going to take a bit more time because I'm trying to explain to you guys how you will get your final answers and how your marks are allocated. All right, if you found this video useful and you enjoyed the presentation, please like the video and share it. Also, if you would like to get a hold of the next videos, do subscribe to my channel and also hit the notification bell so that when I release the next video you will be notified, and you can move on to attempting the rest of the questions in the 2020 exam. I will be uploading more videos for all the exam past papers for mathematics all the way up until I think 2011 or 2010. So by the end of the series, there should be a whole lot of videos that will help you guys just work through as many past papers as possible to make sure that you are ready for your exam and that you will ace your exam. Okay, thank you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye.